There's a Figma power feature every designer needs to understand to elevate their designs. This is not something you should skip. And I'm talking about Figma Auto Layouts. Imagine you're designing a gorgeous mobile app and your client tells you, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, but this app should also work for tablet and web as well." Sounds like a lot of work, but what if you could create a fully responsive design that already looks perfect for all screen sizes from the very beginning? That is the power of Figma Auto Layout, and today you're gonna learn how to harness this power. Hello, MJ here. I'm a senior UI UX designer, and Auto Layout is our topic in today's episode. So let's start from the very beginning. What Auto Layout even is? Auto Layout is just a feature that helps your designs organize themselves automatically. It keeps everything aligned and spaced, even when things change. So when you add, remove, or resize things, everything adjusts on its own. Now, this is a very simple concept, a feature that helps your designs organize themselves automatically, right? But when you apply it, you kind of need to design with a different mindset, which is where most beginners struggle. So put attention here. This is not something you want to skip, because when you learn to use Auto Layout, all your designs will behave beautifully on all screen sizes. You will also save tons of pixel pushing hours, but most importantly, your design life will be so much easier. So Auto Layout will become your ultimate tool for responsiveness. And I'm sure you're very excited to learn about this awesome Figma power feature. So let's get started with our first Figma example. And very quick, if you're here right now, congratulations! You are now on episode 3 of the Smart Figma method that will take you from feeling slow and overwhelming Figma to design with clarity, confidence, and speed, knowing exactly what to use and when, designing faster than you thought possible, harnessing the power of AI within Figma, and work as a professional even if you're still a beginner in Figma. Feel free to check previous episodes if you haven't seen them, but right now you are right here in the ladder to become a Figma powerhouse, and today you're going to move up by learning to use this amazing Figma power feature, Auto Layout. So keep your excitement up because we're starting already with our iPhone 16 size frame. And let's say we have this app called Paintly where users can sell their own art stress-free. And we're adding a button here with a frame instead of a rectangle background because this is the best practice. Auto Layout works better like this, and we'll see more about that in a second. But let me show you an amazing Figma trick for strokes. So let's add a stroke to this button. Let's open settings, go to brush, and you can choose any artistic stroke here for your buttons. Let's make it a bit thicker, and look at this looks perfect for this kind of app. Awesome. And quick note, all your buttons should be components like we saw in the components episode. Right now, for the sake of this example, it will not be a component. We'll do that later, but just don't forget that. Now, let's say you want this to look awesome on tablet too. We can select the frame and stretch. And this is just boring. Nothing is really happening. So let's add some stretching spice here. We're selecting all elements first. For this, I'm holding Shift on my keyboard and clicking each of these elements. Okay, now on our right sidebar on the layout section, click this button over here, and this is the Auto Layout button. And what happened is that now all these elements are grouped together in an Auto Layout frame. And you can see that you've done it correctly because you can see this little icon in our layers section on the left sidebar. This icon represents the Auto Layout frame. Now, if I expand this, we can see that all items keep themselves neatly at the center, which is an amazing start already, but we do have more options. So let's check the Auto Layout section on our right sidebar. Make sure the frame is selected, and let's start with the simplest option, which is alignment. Now, you see this blue highlight around here, right? This represents the blue border of the frame. So what these options do is align all elements inside the frame. We can align left, right, center, top left, top right, etc. A very easy concept. So we want to keep these centered. Perfect. Items inside are centered, but we also need to tell Figma that we want this frame at the center of the screen, right? So let's go up and click the center alignment button, and you will see these anchor markings change from this to this. Great. Now let's try resizing the screen again. And it's perfect, but what about the background image? We can fix that really quick. But first, make sure your background image is the background of the frame and not a separate element. So you will do that like this. Remove the image, make sure you have it saved in your computer somewhere. Then let's click on the frame, select fill and choose image. And then upload your image. Make sure it's set to fill container. And now it is fixed. It is that easy. Now, changing button names and button sizes is super common in design, but what the heck is that? You don't want to fix this issue every single time you make a button. So we're using the power of auto layout to fix it one and for all. First, click on the button frame. Then just click auto layout and problem solved. Except the frame is hugging this text maybe too tight. And like any relationship, we need to give it some space, right? And I'm not making this up. The actual name of this resize option is called hug. So think about it as a literal hug. The person who hugs needs to embrace bigger or smaller based on the hugged contents inside, right? The hug option here works exactly the same. If I type more or less, the frame keeps hugging the contents regardless. But again, this is too tight, so let's give it some space using the first padding option, and this option targets left and right sides. Let's do 30 maybe? Yeah, perfect. Now the next option we're not changing, but this is for the top and bottom padding if you ever need to use it. Now if you're thinking, MJ, but I want my button to be the same width always. That is very easy. You just need to type the width you need and it will automatically change it from hug to fixed width. And we can see that right here. Now there's another option. What if you want the button to expand as big as the container, or in our case, as big as the frame 1? That option is called filled container, which does exactly that. It just fills the container. Very easy to understand, but put attention here because this confuses most beginners. If I open options for this button that I put down here, fill container should be right here in the list, but it's not. And the reason is to fill a container, you need, surprisingly, a container. And a container with auto layout. We can see these buttons here are outside our frame 1, which has the auto layout. But if we open options for the button inside the frame 1, we do have the fill container option. So let's try that, and just like that, your button is now smarter. Now for this design, I will just go with fixed width. Beautiful, but of course, this is the simplest example. So let's try this with an app header now. If you want to know how to make this header, just check the components episode, link in the description below. Now, let's say you made this gorgeous inventory screen. Your client asked you to make it look good for tablet as well. So let's just stop designing separate screens for every single screen size. So we are going to design this once and make it responsive forever. Okay, let's just make a copy of this to make it responsive. And this is what we want it to look like expanded, okay? As you can see, nothing happens yet, only these icons stretch very weirdly, and this is one of the most common questions I get from beginners. Why is this element stretching? Oh, those frustrated faces. But we can fix that very fast. You just need to click on the element that's stretching. Then we are going to check the constraints on our right sidebar. And we're changing both options from scale to left and top. That is it, and that is a case closed. Okay, right now we have no auto layout in our header. And remember, all headers should also be in a component, but for the sake of the example, we are not doing components. But I'll do it later. Let's first click on our header and click Auto Layout. Note that nothing will happen yet when you resize the screen because we need to work part by part first, starting from the inner parts to the outer parts of the screen. But if we resize just the header, we can see a change now, but it's kind of weird to have everything always at the center. We want both back button and menu button to always stay on the corners. And for that, we need to change this gap between the elements. Now, this gap needs to grow automatically, so we cannot set a specific size. So what Figma gives us is the option for auto gap. So let's choose that, and now the buttons stay exactly where we want them. Now let's continue by making our card responsive. So for more complex designs like this, you need to think about it in sections. Elements that you always want to keep close to each other should be either grouped or put inside a frame. In our case, starting from the innermost part, we want the title and price to always be together. So we're grouping them. Then we want that group and the icon to always be together as well, right? Right, we will add a gap here later, but they will always be in the same row, like in our tablet version reference. The best practice is to always have a frame around an icon. So let me add that really quick. Okay, this time let's group them with the auto layout option because we want them to expand when we stretch them. Now we're selecting the last frame we did, this one, and the image to make another auto layout. And this auto layout is the one that will be the whole card, and you will see that in a moment. So let's try it out. And it doesn't really do what we want yet. So starting with how the elements flow within the frame. If we click on this frame and check the flow options, we have it on vertical flow, which means the elements inside will keep themselves stacked on top of each other vertically, right? So let's change that to horizontal flow. Now we don't need this rectangle now because we already have an auto layout that we can change the background of, and we are going to do that. So we're going to remove the rectangle. Okay, change the background colors for the frame. At this point, you may already notice that our layers are a mess. We don't even know what is what at this point. But fortunately, we have AI on our side. So let's click our Actions button and search for Rename Layers. Click that, and after a few seconds, great, this is so much better. Of course, you may need to edit some of them, but this is such a time saver already. Okay, we're going to continue, and our card frame is now called Card. What are the chances? So let's start by adding an auto layout to it and fix some paddings as well. On the padding section, let's do 23 and about 28 looks okay. Now, if we resize the card, we want the section to expand to fill the container, right? So let's click this info container frame, and under width, let's change it to fill container. Exactly how we saw it in the buttons section. Perfect. Let's add some padding using this pink marker, and this is to eyeball the padding. Great. Now, how will you magically make this text appear and disappear? I wanted to say very easy, but it is not that easy, but it's not that complicated either. Okay, let's first copy and paste the text. We're going to group it inside the info container. So just drop it in, and at the end, your layers should look like this. Okay, let's just reduce this gap. Let's also change the text to fill container because we want it to always be the full width of this area or frame. Okay, try it out. And the text looks amazing, but what happened with this icon? We always want this to be in the far right corner. So let's fix that very easily. Click this frame first. Make sure that the gap is calculated automatically and set the width to fill container. That's it? Awesome. We are almost ready to deliver our project to our client. But first, our app version is not transforming back into our original design anymore. So let's make a few fixes. For that, we're going to use the flow option called wrap. Remember, we already saw the vertical and the horizontal flow. Now we're using the wrap flow, because we want this whole section to wrap below the image when it's small. So let's click that first and try it out. Amazing, amazing, that's working now. But at this point, or break point, the text is not even readable. We can fix that too. And this time we're using a width option called min width or minimum width. So what's happening right now is that the card frame is wrapping the text below the image when it thinks the text has a decent minimum width. So what we need to do is to tell this card which is the best minimum width we need. And we'll do that by clicking on the info container. Yeah, this one. Open resize options and click on add min width. Let's set it out to 285 because I already tested this. And now exactly at that breakpoint, 285, the card wraps everything below. Beautiful, just beautiful. Last step for this card is to hide the description when shrinked, and it's surprisingly super easy. Just make sure the card frame is selected. Okay, open height and set a max height for about 333. Yeah, I also tested this before. Make sure this clip content option is checked. Actually, let's align the items to the center so the image is always at the center. Great, there you go. And now our text hides and shows like magic. Last step to make the screen responsive is to add auto layout to the entire screen. For this, we need to be conscious about the paddings. In our case, we need paddings for our card and potentially our page title in case we need to align it to the left. So because we want to keep the padding on these two elements and not on the header, we're putting the title and the card inside their own auto layout frame. Now, let's click the full screen frame and add auto layout. Remember, because we need everything inside to expand, we need to make sure to set the header and the page contents to fill container. Okay, and now it's kind of happening, but because we added another container around the card, we need to tell the card how to behave inside this new container. And let me rename this really quick. So this will be called page contents. Okay, so let's click the card and set it to fill container. Great, it's working now. And because we were padding conscious before, now we can set the padding only to the page contents and don't affect the header. So let's do that. And congrats! You just made a top-notch, fully responsive design. Now, as you can see, auto layout is a must use for every single project because it keeps everything tidy even if things changes. If the screen changes, if you add or remove an item, it keeps everything very well organized, always. So, is there a situation where you should not use auto layout? From my perspective, I will say the only situation where you should not use it is whenever you have a design element that requires to not change. For example, if you're doing a drawing app and the user needs to draw something, you do not want to stretch that canvas, right? You want the drawing to stay like that. So that will be the only situation where I would not use auto layout. If you still have questions about auto layout, feel free to ask me. I'm here to help. And you maybe already know this, but the most important thing about learning something new is practicing. So you have homework, my dear designer, and it'll be an easy one. So what you need to do is just to recreate one of these screens we saw today and make it responsive. When you finish, let me know how it went. And congrats, you officially move up the ladder again, and you're one step closer to become a Figma powerhouse. But you don't need to stop there, because in our next episode, you will learn the fourth Figma power feature you really need to have in your toolbox to continue up this amazing ladder. So subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button just so you get notified of our next episode, which you will find right here when it's published.